never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if
let's just get into it. Hello, everybody. This is Dungeon Master Rob.
It's Dungeon Master Matt.
And this is Dungeon Master of None. Thank you for tuning in once again to our general purpose dungeon mastering RPG podcast. Today we are going to be doing a number of things, but before we jump into it, I wanted to thank all of the people who have been writing to us and engaging with us on social media and promoting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please take the time to write a review or give us, a star rating on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or whatever. It really helps people see us and interact with us and gets us better, more questions and engagement and stuff like that. And if you do have a topic that you'd like to see us cover, if there's like a pet RPG that you're interested in and you'd like us to take a look at, we absolutely would love to do that. So please don't hesitate to write in to dmofnone@gmail.com or at us on Twitter at dmofnone. We love your suggestions. We are very happy to respond. And that is actually the purpose of today's podcast.
Yeah, all the thanks and kudos, just to note, come from Rob and not from me. I give you no thanks and no kudos, just to balance things out.
It is our dynamic, but I thank you and know that you have my eternal love and respect. Matt is the
true
unforgiving father, the Zeus upon Olympus, looking down with.
I'm more of an overgod, like Io, Ao,
Yeah.
Ao from the Forgotten Realms. I take no part in these petty squabbles.
He's got no interest in our mortal affairs. I, however, do, and I greatly appreciate everything. So speaking of engagement and people writing in, we have kind of a
Fucking
backlog.
letters.
Yeah, we have letters. So this is our mailbag of holding. Is what we're calling this. Which yep. You know
Stop
what?
gendering that bag, Rob.
Deal with
Don't
the pun.
gender that bag.
Yeah. Double pun. Deal with the pun because actually these questions are becoming quite bottomless. Let's get to these. And if you've been waiting for an answer to your question, we're very sorry. We had every intention of getting to them, but let's just go ahead and jump into some of the questions.
But, okay.
Yep. I am sorry. We're going to jump into some of the questions that we have.
Let's start off with an easy one, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's start out. Let's ease into it, nice and easy. What's our first one?
Our first letter is from Gordon, last name withheld. Gordon writes, "Love your show. I'm new to D&D and having a hard time finding a party to play with. Also, would love to hear more answers to questions." Okay, we're doing that. "As well as I'd love to hear some campaign diaries that you run weekly. Thanks and keep up the great show."
That's great, Gordon. We should be doing more campaign diaries, though I missed at least a couple of my games recently, so I haven't had anything interesting to share. But we'll make sure to include some updates on what we're working on. But let's address the core of this question. And Gordon, again, thank you. Is having a hard time finding a party to play with. I have some thoughts on this. Matt, do you have something that you want to share before?
So I think most basically is the online is your friend, not necessarily playing online, but if you Google name of your area plus Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing games plus like meetups plus forums, there are a million bulletin boards and Reddits where people post that they're interested in putting games together. You can also go to your friendly local gaming stores to find players. They often have sign-up things. Now, that's probably the easiest way. It's not my most preferred way to find players. Maybe I'll save that juicier one. But so that's way number one.
Yeah, internet is your friend, and I have seen both in writing to us and in just a general concern, a lot of people who live in rural or isolated areas who don't have a friendly local gaming store or don't have anywhere where they can put up a flyer. But the internet really is your friend here, and if you have a reliable internet connection, then you can and should play on Roll20. We have or equivalent service, right? Any of those are fine. We've reached the point in the year of our Lord 2018 where it is actually pretty easy and comfortable to play online. You have a lot of tools. You don't have to pay money. As long as you have even a remotely reliable internet connection, you can make that work. So what I would do, and this is what I have, I am lucky to now have too many players to play with. But for a long time, I was struggling to find a group. And I went on to my local Reddit. I went on to, I posted on Twitter, and I, searched for local forums, and, Craigslist will even work if that's something that you have access to. But, put the word out there, get in contact with people online, and, you should be able to find a group of people in a roughly equivalent time zone to play with. You may have to put more work into it than you would like. If you're having trouble finding a gaming group, then you may unfortunately be relegated to the DM role. Fortunately or unfortunately, depends on your perspective. But get started that way. Go on the online, check your friendly local gaming store, and if you're looking broadly enough, it's never been easier to find a group.
Right. I mean, the best institution in America, and as far as I'm concerned, the only good institution in the United States, is extensive library system, and libraries are and librarians are super into D&D right now. So if you check out a library, they probably have a time set aside for people to play D&D. Often it's aimed at tweens and teens, but not always. Maybe you fall into one of those categories, but your libraries as well. However, I would say the best way to get a group together is, one, do you have a number of friends? 2, do you have a number of family members? Recruit those people. And I would say the easiest way to sell D&D to your friends and family members is to just talk about it as you would a board gaming night.
Just, sell it as a family night or a board gaming night or something like that. Just like it's never been easier to find a group to play with online, it's never been easier than now to convince your friends and family to play D&D. It is cooler, more popular, and has more of a social media and pop culture presence, and you should really have no trouble if you have an even remotely slightly nerdy and open-minded group of friends or family.
Post a picture of the player's handbook with some dice, put a nice Instagram filter on it, put on your timeline, and be like, ooh, who's up for D&D?
This is actually an advanced technique, but it's actually not a bad idea. If you've got a Snapchat or an Instagram or a Twitter or something, put an artsy photo together. Some
Facebook if you're a normie.
Yeah, Facebook if you're a normie. Put some minis, your player's handbook, some dice, and
Go find people with the D&D thirst. They'll come.
Yeah, you will find people. But be creative. But there are people out there. People want to play. People love games. People are looking for. We're always talking about how people are looking for ways to have real connections and sit down with real people and do things that are not online. And as long as you're not in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, and if you are, the internet is your friend. But if you aren't, then you should have no trouble finding. You only need 2 or 3 other people.
Right. Yeah. Don't hold out for like a 6-person party. Get 2 other people. That is enough. And entice them. Fucking make dinner. Get out. Make a pot of chili.
This is another great thing. If you combine it, you say it's a board game night, you say it's a potluck, or you say I'm going to make food, or I'm going to order a pizza.
I declare this problem resolved. We successful check. Gordon, let us know how it goes if you get a game together or not.
Gordon, please follow up with us and let us know. We want to hear if you get a game together.
I put some whiskey into my whiskey. I put some heartbreak into my heart. I put my boots on that old dance floor. I put 3 rounds long in my 44.
All right, next question.
I think it's your turn to read.
It is my turn. This one is from Adrian.
To Dungeon Masters, Rob and Matt. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, though fairly new to DMing. I'm currently loving it, but the thing is, due to the low combat nature of my game, the focus of the game on solving problems has led to my personal not comfort with improvising. Every session takes up a large amount of my time preparing for it. This usually means more than 10 or even 15 hours of preparation, writing things like descriptions for surroundings, stats and infos for all the named NPCs, dialogue openings, and detailed description of events in game. Question, is this normal? I would quite love to increase the amount of freedom and options for the PCs, but this would probably eat up even more of my time. Can you recommend something that will cut out all of this preparation time? Greetings, Adrian.
I have... I would like to have a... I feel like the answer that I'm going to give is not going to be satisfying, but the answer that I have is that you need to get more comfortable with improvising. I think that if you spent half as much time practicing improvisation as you did actually prepping, that in a few months you would be a lot more comfortable with that. And
it's one of those things like cut the cord. If you stop relying on all of your prep work as a crutch, you'll actually practice and get better at improvising.
And so the answer is no, it is not normal to spend that much time.
Yeah, that is killer.
Prepping. And I certainly don't want to make you feel bad, because good for you. I'm deeply impressed by your commitment to the campaign, and I do think that the prep work that you do will make it stronger. But
yeah, you are an awesome DM for doing this.
So one, you should cut the cord, do less prep, and just try to lean into improvising and not preparing for every eventuality. And if it's a little bit weird or awkward, your players should deal with it, because you've been doing a lot of work for them and they should respect that. And I understand that it's not for everybody and that it may not be your strength, but realistically, you absolutely can't do what you're doing in the long term. You will burn out. You will struggle, and your players are going to do things that you don't expect and you're not going to be prepared for. And you'll have spent 8 hours prepping for a long NPC conversation that you're never going to use, and that's not a good use of your time, and it's not the best way to run your campaign.
One of our early episodes has a whole section on how to get better at improvising, so listen to that. But to break your question down and take one example, like you're writing dialogue openings for every NPC, so I'm guessing that means kind of like the first thing they'll say to a player. Just don't do that. Take a 3x5 card or a section of your notes for each NPC. Write down a 2 to 3 word description of an NPC, and it could be something like talks like Matthew McConaughey, or it could be something like has a scar or a stutter or sleazy or something like that. And then write down, just what they want, what their goals are in not even complete sentences, and start from there. Try it with an NPC. If you're worried about it, you're not, that isn't that important. And when the players talk to that, just try improvising with just what you have on your note card. You can also add a section of what does the NPC know, or what information or equipment do they have.
And this is, so what we talked about in the earlier episode is having milestones or a flow chart or things that your players are going to hit on the way to a certain goal, rather than having laid out all of the steps that they're going to take to get there, and then sort of working in whenever they reach a certain NPC, or being flexible with the path that they take. And so write enough so that you know what each NPC is going to say, what they care about, what their motivations are, but don't go through all the trouble of writing all of their dialogue. I know you said that you are uncomfortable with improvising, but if you give yourself enough tools, then it should be very easy to get in the mindset of your NPCs and respond organically to what your players are saying. You don't need to write out every piece of dialogue. If you really can get inside the heads of your NPCs, then you absolutely can, freeform their responses. It should come naturally to you.
Here's another useful tip that I use is just fucking have less NPCs. Players are only going to remember no more than 2 or 3 NPCs per session at most. So write yourself a list of names, and in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there are lists of names and lists of traits. You can just use those if you want. And come up with some NPCs on the fly for people who don't matter that much, right? Try and experiment with making some up as you go along. So just cut back on the total number of these things.
Yeah, I do this all the time. If I have an NPC and, a name and a description and a general, general backstory, and they're supposed to be a shopkeeper or something, and the players never go to that shop and they go to a priest instead, then I'll just take that NPC and they're a priest now. I'll make some adjustments, but, if I've already got their description written up and, an idea of how they're going to fit into the campaign, then I'll just grab them and plunk them down somewhere else. The players don't know that they were supposed to be a shopkeep, and it may not ever matter. So, write, 2 or 3 NPCs that can flexibly fit into your campaign, and then work with them. Don't prepare 10 NPCs for every potential possibility.
Right. Here's my, I think, final piece of advice that may cut down on your 10 or even 15 hours of prep time, is it sounds like you're planning out every eventuality, like if players, decide to teleport to the moon or begin building a mine straight down to the Underdark or something like that. You're really leaving things open-ended. And this is general advice for almost every question, but talk to your players at the end of your next session. Say, all right, this is where we've left off. Where do you think you want to go next? Players have no problem sharing this information and making your life easier. Say, all right, this is where you're at. Do you think you're going to go to this town, continue solving this mystery, work to confront this villain or faction? Just ask them what they're going to plan on, and then that sort of cuts down your branching tree of infinite options to 1 or 2. And it's okay. Sometimes they'll say, we don't know what we want to do next. But usually they'll have a pretty good idea.
The short answer is just do less prep, period, and work on improvising. But also, hopefully, we've given you some tools to still prep so that you don't feel like you're giving bad descriptions or revealing that, you didn't necessarily prepare as well as you would like, and still satisfy yourself and your players. So, best of luck, Adrian.
Yeah.
Please write back to us and let us know if you come to a solution, if you make some progress, and please
let us know if it made it worse.
Yeah, definitely let us know if we hurt. Listen to some of our
Advice is a dangerous thing to give, young Frodo.
Listen to some of our earlier episodes where we talk about this, and feel free to write back again if you have more questions or a follow-up. But thanks for writing in, Adrian. All right.
Woo!
This one is from Brian.
We're really chugging through these.
We are chugging through these. I thought these were going to take a little bit longer. These are great questions. But...
I think it just speaks to how good we are at dealing with other people's problems,
we are
as opposed to
so
our
good.
own.
Yeah, I know. We are great with other people's problems. So this one's from Brian, and I love the title to this email. I'm going to do my best to read as much of it as I can. And it says, "What do you do when you've made a huge mistake?" Well,
Gob Bluth voice.
Yeah, Gob Bluth voice. The first thing that you do is
producer, please put that in there for us.
Yeah, can you do the what's that musical clip from Arrested Development? You know what I'm talking about. Put it in there. Anyway.
Yeah.
I've made a huge mistake.
When you've made a few huge mistake, you sort of stare off into the middle distance and say, I've made a huge mistake. But that's what you do. All right, so hi, Rob and Matt. Hello, Brian. First off, huge fan of the podcast. Thank you. You've been listening for a month now and really appreciate your advice and opinions. I love how you bring a historical and post-colonial perspective to RPGs. Thank you, Brian.
Woo!
We're very hard at that.
Fucking
now
nerd.
We are nerds. You're a nerd. We love it. So now to my problem. As I said, I'm a relatively new DM. Just over a year ago, been playing since 2015. Great for you, Brian. We're very happy when new people come to the hobby. And when we started our campaign, I decided I wanted to build an entirely new world for it. Bold. I'm not going to say you shouldn't have done that.
Fuck yeah.
But it is bold for a first time. I know how naive. Not naive, just bold. respect to you. It absolutely can work to build your first campaign as a homebrew. Spent a month reading all the world building resources I could and constructing my world as I went. Overall, everything has gone fairly well, and the world is generally more cohesive than I could have reasonably hoped for. That's great. That's good. You did the work. However, I do have one problem. I created too grand of a narrative. The players in my campaign were all completely new to RPGs, and when we began, I decided that a grander narrative would give them a sort of purpose that new players often struggle finding. That's true. My thought is if they have a larger goal, they can always fall back on that if they get stuck somewhere and aren't sure what to do. This actually worked out for the early sessions. More experienced players may have felt a bit railroaded, but my newbies really took to the main plotline. Whenever they take one of the minor hooks, they feel guilty that they're not doing their duty and pursuing the main quest. I have recently tossed around ideas for how to free them from this guilt and let them explore the world. I don't want to go into specifics about your game world, Brian, though it seemed really cool, but let's just say that you have an idea to sort of up the ante and then, move on to the next step of the grand narrative. And you want to know, your question is, do you think my intended solution will work out? What flaws can you see that an experienced DM like myself might have missed? What do you do in a campaign when you have made a large-scale mistake with the world or a narrative arc?
Too long, didn't read.
Yeah,
my narrative arc is too long. How might I shorten it? What do you do when you make a mistake with the narrative of the world?
Okay, so your game world has something to do with Celtic theology and African, mythos and spirits and angels, and I love that, and they're gonna, break the world, and that's super cool, and I totally get that. I have written many grand narrative campaigns, and even ran my players through one where they ended up, fighting a galaxy-spanning invasion of dragons. So I totally feel your pain and understand.
Dragons from the moon.
Dragons from the moon. So I understand your concern. However, I think you're sort of misdiagnosing the problem. The problem is not that your narrative is too grand.
It's not grand enough.
Yeah, your players.
No, just kidding.
Your players think that they're not properly motivated to address it in a way that works for the campaign, if that makes sense. So I don't know enough about the timing of it, but you can have a grand narrative, but it is entirely possible to work in small and one-off quests and side plots without losing sight of that. And that is actually one of the most fun and interesting challenges of being a DM. Matt, do you have some thoughts on how to address this?
Here's my basic ass advice, which is kind of boring because it's like on normal call-in shows when the person says, well, you should really talk with a therapist, and not knocking therapy, but that's like the answer for everything. It's the answer for everything because it's a good answer. But for Dungeon Master questions, the answer for everything is also just talk to your players, right? Get a little out of character, out of game information from them. Say, hey, so everyone seems really interested in all these side quests and stuff like that. Why is that? Where do you want the game to go? What makes these side quests interesting? What would you like to see in the way that your characters and the game develop? So just, sit down and talk to your players for like 15 minutes. It solves a lot of problems.
The other thing I would say is Brian, I don't, again, I'm sure you're doing a good job and it depends on your players, but write better hooks. If there's a grand narrative and they need to, do all this, they need to stop the world from ending or whatever, then, and if you want them to go off and explore a side area or do a side quest, then make the object of that side quest crucial to the grand plot. Make them, meet a critical NPC or find a MacGuffin that they need to, fulfill the prophecy of the grand narrative. You can make those side plots and those hooks sufficiently enticing, even if they, feel compelled to pursue the really critical stuff. Make sure that you're giving them the right motivations to pursue the things that you want them to pursue. And sweeten the pot if you have to.
Yeah.
Throw in some magical items.
Bribe them. You say you're using the Pathfinder system, give them those fucking +2 natural armor amulets.
Give them some bonuses. Look, you can also threaten them. Say, one of you has been poisoned, and if you don't complete this thing within 48 hours, then you're going to suffer a con bonus forever. I mean, maybe don't do exactly that, but you could. But there are enticements that you can do.
Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea, Rob.
Don't do what I just said. Definitely don't give them like permanent penalties. That's such an annoying thing to do. But you can say like, if you don't do this, then one of your favorite NPCs is going to be under threat, or the town that you like to visit and do your shopping in is going to be attacked by orcs. I don't know enough about your world, but you can give them reasons to pursue things that are not critical to your grand narrative, that without having to just say, oh, hey, you should go on this side quest. It's about creating the right kinds of hooks.
Here's, I think, a key sentence of Brian's letter that helps me address his problem. So Brian writes, but due to the grand nature of the main story arc, whenever they take one of these side hooks or side quests, they feel guilty that they're not doing their duty and pursuing the main quests. All right. So this tells us two things, is that they feel like maybe the main quest is maybe a little bit of a chore, and two, they're actually interested in the side hooks maybe because they're more interesting and accomplishing and relatable immediately to their characters. So you can address this in a number of ways, right? One, you can give them more ownership of the main quest. You can, have a session or an event where they get to decide when the turn or the evil invasion or the releasing of the ancient power happens, right? They know it's gonna happen, but the players have one of the items or the keys or the rituals that will control it. They can control the timeline, so they know they have to do this, but it's up to them when they do it.
Yeah.
So that's one way. The other way, I think, is to just, as Rob said, right, take those side arcs and make sure that they connect in some small way to the main quest, and let them know out of game, out of character, that that they have this amount of time to complete the main quest, and if they want to do side quests for the next 6 months because they're having fun, that's okay.
Yeah, think about this in CRPG terms. In almost every major CRPG, the Western ones at least, you know who the bad guy is pretty early on, or you know who the big threat is, but you have to jump through a bunch of hoops. And usually, if they're well written, you have a good reason for it. You need to recruit allies, you need to build up your power, you need to collect items. And this can feel a little gamey, but it's a good way to think about, structuring your game. And it doesn't have to be gamey. The great thing about a tabletop role-playing game is that you can create a much more robust narrative than if you're programming a game. And so, say, hey, in order to complete this turn, in order to stop this event from happening, here are some steps that you have to accomplish. And then write why. Tell your players why it is crucial for them to do other things first. You do mention, so I did want to address one thing you mentioned, pushing the main quest up and then having there be a turn. This is a thing that can work. You can do all Final Fantasy VI on it. You can have them fail or succeed, and then the world is changed, and they have an entirely new main quest. So if they're pushing way too fast, go ahead and have them either succeed or fail with the grand narrative, and then that gives you the freedom to pick up and build a new one. That's maybe like an emergency, but you can absolutely do that. You are the DM. The power is in your hands, especially since you homebrewed the world.
And I just want to say this is a high-level, big league question, Brian, and we're impressed with that you've made it to a level of DMing that you can even have such a problem.
Yeah,
congratulate yourself on fucking your own world up in this way, because it's a pretty cool way to fuck your own story.
So, again, let us know how it goes. Let us know if we made it worse. We absolutely want to know if we made it worse. And, we look forward to hearing from you, Brian. Thank you again for writing in. All right, we have one final question.
We actually have two final questions if we
have
want to
two?
get to all of them.
All right, we have two final questions. So one more before we here's our penultimate question, and it's a 3-parter.
Woo!
This is from Sid. So thank you, Sid, again for writing in. Hey, Matt and Rob, first off, I really enjoy your show. Please keep doing what you're doing. Well, we're not going to stop. God damn it, whether you wanted us to or not.
Never log off.
Never log off. I love being able to tap into your experience on the game. Thank you. We like to share. I returned to D&D having not rolled a D20 since 1982. Oh, Sid! A great tragedy, but we're very happy to hear that you are now back into the game. You're running 2 games, one for my daughter and her friends, good for you, and the other for a group of buddies. Since January, I've done about 8 sessions altogether. That's pretty good. It's actually very good. I hope you're pacing yourself. I'm getting the hang of it, but I have a lot of questions, and I thought maybe I would just throw them out and let you pick any that you thought you might be good for the show. They're all good for the show, Sid. All questions are good questions. So, here is the first one.
Uno.
Do you have a technique or method for toning down the metagame feel with ability checks?
Ooh.
Yes. So, Sid says this is something that he's been dealing with, and it mostly has to do with checking for traps.
I mean, this is such a iconic
This is a classic
thing.
Yeah, this is a
I'm reminded
classic
of
problem.
that like Rich Burlew like comic of, you know, a D&D character standing in a room and like, you know, I got a 4 on my perception check and there's a bunch of enemies around him, or players know when they fucked up, right?
Right. So Matt actually is really good about this, and he's referenced this before, but here's the thing. Don't make your players roll unless they absolutely have to. So 5th edition has, or other editions, but especially 5th edition, has really leaned on the idea of passive perception. And whenever possible, you should try to use that, if that makes sense. So rather than having your players roll to check for traps whenever they enter a new hallway, have the traps balanced around their passive perceptions wherever possible, or make rolls in secret for them. That can work equally as well. Ideally, your players will play along with you, and if they roll badly on a perception check that you ask them to make, they're not all going to suddenly metagame that they know they fucked up. But if that is a problem, then feel free to roll in secret or just use their passive perception checks to avoid the problem entirely.
This is, again, just such a perennial problem, right? Your example of if a player rolls crappy on their perception check, they sort of feel like they're just walking the plank as they push forward down, the dungeon. They know they haven't spotted anything. So instead of calling for perception checks all the time, just ask your players, as Rob was saying, what they are doing. And if a player says, as I walk down the hall, I'm looking above me to see if anything might fall down on us. And if there's a giant scythe trap that was going to swing down on them, just say, oh yeah, you see it. Otherwise, you can check their passive perception or roll in secret while they're walking down the hall. So just, have them make less checks for things like this. At least for me as a player, I tire of making perception checks all the damn time.
Yeah, I do too. I have tried to, in my games, either roll in secret for them, knowing their perceptions, or use their passive perception, because it is annoying and frustrating to constantly ask your players to roll perception checks, and it heavily privileges one skill over others. So
perception is already the most overused check in the game, so anything you can do to cut down on it is fine.
So get creative with this, or if you have a problem, roll in secret, write down all your players' perceptions, and just do it for them. This is an iconic, classic problem. As Matt referenced, it has been joked about in more than one D&D property, so there's no easy answer for it. You're just going to have to work with your players and come up with some workarounds.
Yeah. And sometimes it's okay to embrace the fact of a player, peeks their head around the corner or looks through the window and they roll a 1 or a 2 on their perception check. And, the player knows that, yeah, maybe there's something there, but they didn't see it. Just embrace the fact that they try to peek around the corner and instead a fucking roof tile falls on their head and they don't notice anything.
Right. And if your players do something clever, like they describe a way that they check for traps in a unique way that's not, I poke every tile with a 10-foot pole, then reward them. Say, oh yeah, you find the trap. But make them work for that, and absolutely don't encourage them to poke every single square with a 10-foot pole. Nobody likes that. All right, second question from Sid. These are really good questions, Sid. I really like that first one. That's a classic. This one is also a classic. What are clues for you that an encounter is about to get deadly for the party? And what DM tips do you have to mitigate such a situation? Sid describes a scenario where his daughter's group encountered a mimic and did not realize quite how dangerous the mimic was, and 2 of them went unconscious before they prevailed. So this is absolutely a problem that I still encounter, even with my experienced groups. Matt's group in Curse of Strahd wildly underestimated one of my combats a couple of sessions ago, and all very nearly died. And so it should tell you that there's not really
counterspell OP.
They got very lucky.
We don't need to slow down.
This was funny because they got very lucky by playing mechanically well, even though they had astonishingly bad tactical and strategic decisions.
I'm going to give a controversial opinion, if that's okay with you, Rob, on this one, is that there is such a thing in D&D as not character skill, but player skill, right? Mm-hmm. So an experienced player like myself or Rob knows that from previous editions or from DMing from the current edition that the mimic is actually a pretty deadly foe. But there's no way in-game or encountering it for the first time that you know that, a thing that can shapeshift into a table or a dog or whatever is actually really scary. There's no way to know that it's actually a pretty dangerous monster. But I think that's okay. I think it's okay that, players for the first time not knowing that mimics are really dangerous and they almost die. Next time they'll know that mimics are really scary.
Yeah,
and that might not be your style, but in my opinion, it's okay.
It is a little controversial, but I agree with Matt. And this may be hard for your daughter's group if they're young and they don't want to lose their characters. That's totally understandable. But I think the D&D should be deadly. And if your players make the mistake of underestimating a foe and they suffer for it, then that's exciting. That adds intensity, and that adds stakes, and that makes the game more interesting and challenging. And so that you should frequently vary the CRs and the challenge of your encounters and expect your players to adapt. And this is something that I would like to do better at, and that many modules and players should work harder at is varying the challenge of the combats that you have, rather than having one combat every session or one or two that are about the same level. Have a bunch of little ones or one big one. Throw in something that's a little bit dangerous. Having something that your players have to run from early on in a campaign is a great learning experience and a great tool for setting expectations for your players. I think that every campaign really should have a moment when they encounter something that they really struggle with or may have to run away from.
And back to your question of how do you telegraph to your players that a monster is scarier than they assume, kind of assuming the players haven't ever played the game before and don't have any knowledge. One way to do this is fucking cut straight to the source. Make that roll against them out on the open and say, the mimic makes an attack. It gets a +7 to hit, and they're level 2, and they have, much lower bonuses, and they're like, whoa, that's a big bonus. It rolls 2d6 +4 damage, and roll it in front of them, and they're like, now we know that this thing does this much damage, and your players are not stupid. They will do the math and say, shit, if we take 2 more of these hits, we'll be dead.
If your campaign allows for it, it can be great to have it squish an NPC on its first turn. That's a great way to demonstrate its power and also give your players time to adapt. Have a villager run in front of it, and it will gobble them up. That's a great
put in
way
a Wilhelm scream as an innocent person.
Another thing, this is very gamey, but another thing that I do is that when I have this is both general DM advice, and if you want to indicate that a fight is particularly hard, is I usually have battle music if it's a particularly difficult fight. So
Now,
that's something that you can do to indicate that they should take it seriously.
if you are against gamey things like showing the creatures to hit bonus or damage or AC or current hit points, which are all things I sometimes do, but still want to emphasize the deadliness of it, just, amp up your description. Size of a creature is something that new players tend to associate with difficulty. Describe its, gaping maw, huge teeth, resilient skin, like when the players shoot it with a cantrip and, you would normally describe, your firebolt cuts a goblin in two or sears a hole straight through its head. It just sort of burns it a little bit. It doesn't seem to be very effective. Amp up your description as to how well the players are at damaging it or how resilient it is or how scary it looks.
Yeah, this is the best in-game way, I think, to indicate that they're fighting something serious, is to really, really go all in on the description. Make sure you describe how terrifying and horrible it is and have it shrug off their attacks so they know that they're dealing with something serious. That's the best in-game, non-meta way to indicate that what they're fighting is deadly. Though your players aren't always going to get it, and I have a bad habit of over-describing lots of things, and so my players don't always realize that I'm describing something that's dangerous. So your mileage may vary, but like Matt said at the beginning, I think
if you cry wolf all the time with crazy expensive description, then,
like Matt said, I think this is good. I understand with your daughter's group, I don't know how old she is, but if she's young, they may not want their characters to die, and so that's a bit of an issue. But generally in games, I think it is good. I think it is good for more encounters to be surprising and deadly, and when you have one that's unexpected that downs a player or kills a player, that can add real stakes to the campaign. And so I say, let your players know that it may happen and lean into it.
Yeah, mimics are great. Your players will never trust another treasure chest and or inanimate object again.
Yeah, mimics are such a great thing to throw in to.
All right, last question.
Last question. All right, this is a good one too. Sid, these are great questions.
Trace.
Thank you so much for writing in. Trace, yes. Do you abandon plot ideas if you see your players are not clinging to them or even recognizing that they are important plot points? And
yes.
Sid talks about...
Yes.
Yeah, so actually
yes.
I don't need to describe this.
Yes.
The answer is yes. This is a real easy one, and it's so frustrating because you'll write up something like tasty and delicious and, lots of depth and intrigue, and your players will just absolutely ignore it. And you know what? Just eat it. Just put it in your pocket, save it for later, adapt it for later in the campaign. But the answer to
save
this
it for another campaign.
Yeah.
With a different group of players.
Yeah, the answer to this is absolutely yes. There's no answer for this, but yes, do it. Just leave it. If you can, put it in somewhere else, go ahead. But don't try to guide your players towards something that they're not interested in. That's a sure way to make them feel railroaded and irritated.
Right. In a campaign a long time ago, I put in all these plot hooks about intrigue in the pirate council of the I forget what they're called, the Brethren Lords, or what, I don't know, Robert, you know the good name.
I remember, I know what you're talking about. They're the Brethren.
Yeah, the Brethren Swords of the, it was all this stuff. I was like, ooh, it's Game of Thrones, but with pirates and stuff like that. And the players were just not interested. They just wanted to go kill people who had slighted them in the past, without ignoring how many votes they had on the thing. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is a bad idea. Just abandon it, right?
Yeah.
These things can happen in the background, or they're no longer important, and you move on. It's
knowing when to abandon an idea or an NPC or a plot point is one of the most crucial skills that you can have as a DM. Is learning when your players don't care, aren't interested, or it's going to be too much work and too railroady to bring them back into line. That's right. You got to know when to walk away and
know when to cast expeditious retreat.
Yeah. So there's more to be said. But
count your copper.
The short answer is
you're sitting at the 3-dragon ante table.
The short answer is yes. Absolutely abandon those plot ideas.
Sid, thank you so much
for counting. For writing
when the XP is
I hope
done.
This was helpful. I'm so glad to hear that you are playing again and that you're running 2 groups. We would love to have additional questions for you if there's more that you feel like we could answer. But yeah, best of luck, and I hope that you keep on keeping on. So thanks again, Sid.
Ta-ta, Sid.
Standing on the corner with a nickel or a dime, there used to be a rail car to take you down the line. Too much beer and whiskey to ever be employed. When I got to Nashville, there was too much soul destroyed. Wasted on the wayside, wasted on the way. If I ain't gone tomorrow, you know I'm gonna get. Come back, baby, back in time. I want you back when you were mine. Back, baby, back in time. I want to go back when you were mine.
Any
Final question.
Final question. Oh, sorry. That's right. We have one more. Jesus. Sorry,
Fucking
this last
asshole.
question.
You keep
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting this last question.
All right. Last question from David. He says, here's his question. I want to make sure that my human and humanoid NPCs are diverse, meaning not just medieval, European, stereotypically white, but I can't find a skillful way to do it. For example, if the characters are talking to an innkeeper, or I can't exactly say she's Vietnamese because there's no Vietnam in this world, saying he has brown skin, is clunky and awkward, and doesn't really capture the full scope of diversity I'm looking for. Besides describing real-world ethnic cultural traits, tend to creep into stereotyping. Printing out photos of actors or stock photos of people from diverse backgrounds also doesn't feel quite right and would interrupt the game. So, how do I help with this? Any ideas? David.
This is something that I feel very strongly about, and David, thank you so much for writing in. So I want to start with the last thing that David said to address it, because he's right. It would be weird to print out photos of actors or stock photos of people. However, we live in a time of incredibly rich character art, and if you
Characterart.tumblr.com.
You go to characterart.tumblr.com, you go to Pinterest, and you can search for any sort of combination of descriptors for, for fighter, for age, for race, for setting, and you will find a rich tapestry of character drawings that you can draw from, that many of which are people of color. And so,
this is a scary hole to go down, because you can definitely spend all of your Dungeon Master prepping time creating Pinterest boards. So be careful.
No, definitely have not done that. Nope, never done that.
No,
but
no,
yeah,
no,
it's dangerous. But yeah, if you want, if the easiest way, if you're comfortable like holding up your iPad or printing out, photos and saying this is what she looks like, this is what he looks like, that's a great way to do it, and there's never been a better time. However, if you want to go with general description, if you want to describe what a person looks like, there are ways to do that without saying they're brown skinned or she's Vietnamese. And I have used this Tumblr page.
You want to go with the old standby that reeks of Robert Jordan.
Right.
The woman in flowing silk had almond eyes.
Yeah,
and
so
I
listen,
feel like what is the deal with almond eyes? I feel like
li-
I've read that in a million shitty fantasy novels, and it's made my skin crawl every time.
Yeah, so listen, I'm going to link a chart from pre-colonial Brazil, and you're going to want to take a look at it and decide how many, quarters of race your person has, and you're going to describe them according to the no, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. No, there's a great Tumblr page, writingwithcolor.tumblr.com, and it has all of these really tremendous descriptions on how to describe a person who is black or who's Asian or who is not white without saying they're black, without saying they're Asian, describing different skin tones and different racial markers without being explicitly racist. And you don't have to do a whole lot. You can just say like a few things. And part of the problem here is that, and this is something that Ursula Le Guin ran into with her Earthsea series, is that your players and you may just assume that everybody is white anyway. Mm-hmm. So do what you can, describe them, but just be aware that this is that we in the West are constantly fighting against a white-centric, Eurocentric worldview, and everybody is if unless told otherwise explicitly going to assume that anyone is white. And so try to throw in a few descriptors, pull up some character art, but just be aware that this is an ongoing problem, and you're going to struggle with it, eternally, probably.
Oh, Rob, making the joke about Brazil reminds me that I just started a book that you're gonna love by my really good friend Zach Morgan. It's called Legacy of the Lash. I think it's like race and punishment in the Brazilian Navy and Atlantic world. It's about
incredible.
Like the post-abolition Brazilian slavery race and the rebellion of a bunch of naval ships. It's super cool, especially if you want to run like a steampunk maritime game, because it's set in that like Victorian era.
That actually does sound amazing. Please send it to me when you're done.
I got distracted. One thing I wanted to address with David's thing is, if you want to avoid as Robert said, the medieval European stereotypical white, is you can take the Ursula K. Le Guin approach, which, do it like subtly and, let your players eventually realize, oh, not everyone's white. You can do it. This is one of my favorite ways. Shout out, hashtag Eberron the fucking best. Their campaign setting is humans in the default area of the campaign. The main continent, Korrivar, are basically all refugees or immigrants from a place that is diverse as Afro-Eurasia is in Earth, and so there is a mix of phenotypes, and so everyone is very different. And remember that something like medieval European stereotypical white, in medieval Europe, there was not the same concept of whiteness that we had, right? There was people had some awareness of phenotypes, though they didn't write about it very often, so we don't really know what. But there was no whiteness as race.
This is not really within the scope of David's question, but given if you're playing in a fantasy world, unless you have a really, really good reason for it, you should establish early on that people are of different skin colors and, ethnic backgrounds, because there's absolutely no reason for everyone to be white in the Forgotten Realms or in Eberron or whatever, because it's not actually Europe.
Well, in the Forgotten Realms there is, because they list out a million different human races for no fucking reason.
Sorry, I forgot.
Keep track.
I forgot that there actually is a reason in Forgotten Realms. But generally, one of the great things about fantasy is that you don't have to do that shit. So if you want to, and you should, run a game where people don't have to adhere to a white Eurocentric Middle European worldview, you can. Everybody can be from all over, and they should be. So,
and this is I think the best way to think about this. And this is getting a little beyond your question, David. So I'm sorry, but think about it world building wise. It's best to not map regions or nations or continents one-to-one to Earth, right? Yeah. Eberron does this really well, where you can see that, Breland in Eberron is a little bit England, and Canaroth is a little bit Russia, and maybe Adonar is a little bit Italy, but they don't really map.
Golarion does this as pretty well also.
Yes.
It's
a little bit worse, I would say. There's fucking Egypt.
There is Egypt, but
and
otherwise...
there's fucking France.
There's Egypt and France, but
there's
otherwise...
fucking Spain. I actually think it does it really poorly.
Okay, never mind. Ignore...
I think the fucking Avatar, what's it called? Avatar, the...
Last Airbender?
Yeah, The Last Airbender does this really well. And
actually, that's a great example. Avatar
influences of things,
yeah.
But they don't really map one-to-one.
Actually, yeah, that's such like a rich example, because the Fire Nation is mostly Japan and the Earth Empire is mostly China, but there's
not
kingdom,
exactly.
But not exactly, and it's like just enough to so that you have those touchstones that they're recognizable, but not so much that it's this is fantasy Japan. But yeah, so definitely Eberron does a great job of this, of having cultural markers and touchstones that are recognizable without having it be one-to-one. And this is something fantasy has done, all fantasy has done for decades, is, this is fantasy Japan, this is fantasy England, this is very frequently fantasy Scandinavia, and that's lazy, and we can all do better. We can all do better. So So, David, thank you for the really, really good question.
Yeah, it's a great question,
We may
David.
address this in more detail later, but it was a great
Yeah,
question.
this one could be a whole episode.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on this. So thank you for asking it, and hopefully we can go into more detail further. But the easiest thing to do is what we said at the beginning. Go on Pinterest, go on Tumblr, look for character art and say, she looks like this, he looks like this. And that's a great way to indicate that a person is not white without making it complicated.
Oh, I forgot I was gonna do like a some of my friends were interested in a like Avatar: The Last Airbender campaign, and I thought about doing a Cold War one, like, you know, the newer series was like a little bit 1920s, so I was like,
it was
let's
more
advance the
steampunky,
next one to 1950s and talk. The last one's about fascism. This one's going to be about sort of global imperialism and globalization, and there's going to be an evil avatar, and yeah, I need to get back to doing that. There's just no good system for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Maybe Savage Worlds.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Okay, so that's
Sorry,
all of our questions.
I'm drunk and rambling.
No, that's a great... I mean, I actually really want to talk about... I fucking love Avatar: The Last Airbender. I would love to talk about that just like in general terms about like what you can draw from that. Maybe we can do that in our novel and movies episode.
Yeah.
We can talk some Avatar: The Last Airbender. All right. Any last thoughts before we move on? Thanks again.
I feel like everything has changed since the Fire Nation attack.
Thanks everyone who wrote in. Please, again, if you have more questions that you would like us to answer, we would love to answer them. If you're somebody whose question we answered, please let us know if it was helpful or if you have a follow-up. We're always interested in helping games improve and sharing our experience where we can. But thanks again for listening. Once again, rate and review, share with your friends, let your DMs or players know about us, and we will talk to you again next time, folks.
I'm DM of None, and I'm here to say we're talking about games in a different way. I was hoping to jump in on the freestyle, Rob.
I thought I couldn't go like you got me in this place. All right, farewell.
Moment of steel, a dry-eyed house. Did he say goodbye to you, or did you kick him out? I know you're not afraid to go alone, but this was a marriage of spirit, flesh and bone. Now what you gonna do when the planets shift? What you gonna do? Gonna steady your wrist and beat all over the Milky Way. The stars in your eyes look red today. Cry love, the tears of an angel, the tears of a girl.